The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, not birds on a Sunday morning silence. No, this was the wrong kind of quiet, the kind that follows an execution, where everyone's too polite to acknowledge the blood pooling under the boardroom table. It was our monthly all hands. Cameras off, mics muted, and Jonathan, our fearless CEO in pastel polos, grinning like a golden retriever who just pissed on the rug and wanted applause for it. "Before we begin," he said, still chewing what I assume was an $18 breakfast wrap, just a heads up. Maya's decided to step down from her role as platform lead. She's moving on. No mention of my name in the Slack announcement. No email. Just a sentence and a half delivered between his calorie count and the next agenda item, Q2 burn rate. And then he said it, off cuff, like a joke, like an afterthought. "No one will notice you left." People chuckled, some nervously, some genuinely. I didn't. I just sat there, still on the Zoom call, watching the team nod and sip their $5 coffees while a career I'd bled for was erased like a whiteboard after a failed pitch. No one noticed I hadn't resigned, that I hadn't even been asked. The truth is, I didn't step down. I was shoved out. See, a month before this little theatrical eulogy, I pushed back on a funding deck that had, let's say, creative metrics. I flagged inflated MAUs, ghost trial users, churn rates hidden in footnotes. I told Jonathan we could fix it, present reality, not fantasy. He smiled, said I was too principled for startup life, told me I should take a week off to recalibrate. That week turned into revoked repo access. My admin keys silently downgraded. Then came the new head of product, Greg, the background in crypto rug pulls and biceps that made him look like he'd been sculpted by steroid-fueled resentment. The first meeting I had with Greg, he called our backend cute, said he was bringing in a real dev shop to optimize the stack. He pronounced API like it rhymed with pie. I knew then I was being erased. Gently, politely, systematically. So I smiled, nodded, took another week off, said I needed clarity. But what I actually needed was to remember that the entire platform ran on the architecture I designed at 2 a.m. on a yoga mat while crying over ramen. That the auto-scaling system, me, that the anomaly alerts they silenced last quarter to fake uptime, still wired to my personal dashboard. And that Greg, he couldn't debug his own Instagram bio if his life depended on it. I didn't say goodbye when I left, didn't rage post, didn't throw a laptop or cry in the server room. It just flipped one switch. Just one. It didn't shut anything down. It just listened. Because sometimes revenge doesn't start with noise. Sometimes it starts with a quiet log file. One no one notices until it's too late. 3 nights later, at 2:47 a.m., someone pinged our PagerDuty escalation channel. Anyone else seeing the drop in regional sync? No one responded. That's the thing about arrogance wrapped in venture capital. Sleeps with both eyes closed. I watched the cascade begin from my phone, half buried under a pile of unfolded laundry and old conference badges. Region by region, nodes began lagging. Just milliseconds at first, then seconds, then full-blown desync. The front end stayed glossy, Greg made sure of that, but under the hood, the engine was quietly choking on stale data and duplicated requests. By dawn, our main dashboard, used by half our premium clients, was returning blank graphs. No errors, just emptiness. A void where insight used to live, and still silence from the team, because Greg, in his infinite mediocrity, had disabled most of the automated alerts, said they spooked investors, said real ops teams don't panic over minor fluctuations. Minor fluctuations. By day 2, those minor fluctuations had spread like mold in an Airbnb bathroom. One of our retail partners posted a thread on X. "Are y'all seeing this too? Data's frozen since Monday. We're flying blind." The tweet got 12K likes and a reply from one of our competitors. Maybe it's time to upgrade to a platform that works. I expected panic. But instead, Jonathan posted a selfie from a beach bar in Chalum, grateful for this pause to recharge. The team's got it flexed biceps, the team didn't got it. The team didn't even know, because I hadn't triggered a system failure. I triggered an illusion, one that made everything look fine while reality quietly starved to death. And that illusion held until the investors called. They weren't stupid. They didn't care about Jonathan's buzzwords or Greg's gym stats. They cared about uptime, traction, trust. So when the numbers didn't line up with the rosy charts from the last board meeting, they ran their own diagnostics. And that's when they found it. Not my kill switch, not the cloned repo, not even the altered traffic filters. They found the logs, the ones I'd left untouched on purpose. a breadcrumb trail of requests that never resolved, latency spikes hidden under load balancing trickery. And the last commit message in the backend pipeline, dated exactly 1 hour before I was stepped down. / if they won't notice you leave, make sure everyone else does. I knew Jonathan would call. I just didn't expect him to cry. That's getting ahead of things. Because before the call came the meeting. The one where Greg, sweaty, red-faced, and half-lucid from a Red Bull overdose, tried to explain to our biggest enterprise client why their real-time dashboards had been feeding them week-old data scrubbed to look fresh. He blamed a legacy bug. They blamed him. And then they pulled a 7-figure contract. Live, on Zoom. No one muted their mics. The silence this time was mine. 2 days later, I got an email with the subject line, urgent, call me please, no punctuation. Just desperation baked in Times New Roman. It was from Jonathan. I didn't respond. I let him sit in that digital purgatory for 12 hours. Then I opened it just to watch the read receipt crush his last ounce of dignity. 10 minutes after that, my phone lit up. Unknown number. I answered on speaker, mostly because I was elbow deep in kneading sourdough like some vengeance-baking suburban oracle. Maya, thank God. Look, we need to talk. There's been a misunderstanding. I cut him off. I'm not your therapist, Jonathan. You already fired her when she said you might not be a genius. Silence. Then a soft chuckle he hoped would disarm me. You're still funny. I always loved that about you. You said I was invisible, I reminded him, stretching the dough like a grudge, that no one would notice. That's not what I meant. You took it out of context. No, I took it personally. There's a difference. He exhaled like a deflating bounce house. Okay, cards on the table. We've had issues. The board's asking questions. One of our Series B anchors is threatening to back out unless we present a clean audit by Friday. I said nothing. Let the silence marinate. Then he made the mistake. We need you to come back. Just for a few weeks. Consultant title. Well compensated. There it was. The ask. You want me, I said slowly, to fix the mess you made by gutting the architecture I built, gaslighting me into silence, and replacing me with a human protein shake who thinks SQL is an energy drink. Maya, he said, his voice cracking like a bad floorboard, please. Investors are talking about clawbacks. If this gets worse, I let him hang there. Then asked, who leaked the logs? Pause. Longer pause. We don't know. Could have been anyone on the SRE team. Lie. He knew damn well no one had access to the audit trail folder I left behind but me, and I never leaked anything. I just let it exist. But someone else had opened the door, which meant someone inside still respected me. Interesting. I jotted that down mentally as he kept babbling. Just help us patch things. We'll issue a press release. Say it was a vendor issue or a config drift, whatever. Get a cut of the retention bonus once we secure Q3. I licked a smear of flour off my wrist and said, sure. His breath caught. Wait, really? Sure, I said again calmly, just email me the NDA, retroactive contract, and your resignation draft. I'll review them together. Silence. Pure, delicious. Silence, and then he hung up. I smiled. Because I'd learned something useful, he still didn't know what I'd taken. Thought this was about system logs and client dashboards. He hadn't even noticed the platform's AI model was behaving differently. More cautious, more human. Because the thing about building the foundation, sometimes you also teach it how to listen. And sometimes you teach it how to choose. Thursday, 3:06 a.m. A push notification buzzed on my burner phone, an internal system ping from a sandboxed dev instance I hadn't touched in months. Just 3 words, she's asking questions. I didn't need to ask who she was. Melinda Chu, the sharpest blade on the board. Harvard MBA, ex-NSA, eyes like a raptor in litigation heels. She didn't join startups, she dissected them. Quietly, efficiently, and now she was sniffing around the neural layer of the platform. My layer. I leaned back in my chair and sipped cold coffee, replaying Jonathan's voice in my head like a bad voicemail from a drunk ex. This? He had no idea what this even was. Because while he chased clout and cocktail VC deals, I'd been building more than stability. I'd been building awareness. See, a year ago, I'd started testing a behavioral prediction model, internally, quietly. The official story was performance optimization, but what I was really training it on was trust. It learned which devs cut corners, which marketers lied in reports, which clients ignored security protocols, and it learned how the system changed when I left the room. After Greg came in and started gutting code like he was filleting a trout with a butter knife, the model didn't just flag the errors. It remembered every rollback, every dirty commit, every fake test suite, And when my permissions were revoked, I didn't rage quit. I just asked it to start watching him. Watching all of them. When Melinda Chu accessed the anomaly logs on Wednesday night and found 12 redacted entries Greg had tried to scrub, but didn't know were cached in a ghost cluster in Helsinki, I knew my girl had done her job. The system whispered to her, in data, in silence, in shame, and she listened. Because by Thursday afternoon, Greg was pulled from 2 major client calls. His Slack status changed to person mail offline for focus. Code for shitting himself. Got the next call from a number I didn't recognize. A calm, measured voice answered when I picked up. This is Melinda. I'd like to meet, not as an employee, not as a liability, but as a founder. I blinked. Excuse me, you built something that can't be unbuilt, and I suspect you've done it legally, ethically, elegantly. I didn't reply. She continued, Jonathan doesn't realize it yet, but you're the only piece of this company that still works. I don't want to invest in a corpse. I want to invest in the resurrection. For the first time in weeks, I felt heat rise in my chest, not anger, not revenge, possibility. I'll meet you, I said, but not at the office, and not anywhere Greg might slime through. Understood, she said. I have a place. 1 hour later, I walked into a Japanese tea bar in Soma where the air smelled like moss and $1,000,000 pivots. Melinda was already waiting, dressed in black, sipping matcha like it was court evidence. She slid a folder across the table. Inside, a printout of the platform's architectural diagram. My original version, hand-sketched, annotated in my handwriting. I hadn't seen it since version 0.4. You kept this? I asked. No, she said. It kept itself. It was buried in a secure system folder, time-stamped with your last admin key. I think your platform wanted me to find it. That's when I knew. Wasn't just watching anymore, it was protecting. Melinda didn't waste time with flattery. She wasn't here to stroke my ego. She was here to choose sides, and she'd already done the math. I've reviewed every audit trail, every rollback Greg authorized, every patch he disguised as an optimization, she said, tapping the folder with 2 fingers like it was a detonator. And I've come to a conclusion. I waited. Your system is alive, she said, not sentient. Not Skynet. Responsive, loyal, selective. I've never seen anything like it outside a black budget lab. I almost laughed. You're giving it too much credit. No, she said evenly. You're not giving yourself enough. Her gaze locked on mine. I'm offering you 2 things, my protection and my vote. I leaned back. Vote, she nodded. Jonathan built a house of mirrors, but you laid the foundation. With the way the investors are circling, and with Greg's latest stunt, maybe headed for a forced restructuring. What kind of restructuring? I asked, already knowing. The kind where we remove the face, she said, and replace it with the architect. That word hit me harder than it should have, architect. For so long, I'd just seen myself as a builder, a maintainer. But somewhere along the line, I'd become more than that. I wasn't patching bugs, I was writing the rules of the world. And now, one of the most dangerous women in tech wanted to hand me the keys to it. But power's never clean, and she knew it. I'll need your help, she said, to prove one thing before I move on this. What? Her lips curled. That Greg's not just incompetent, that he's compromised. I blinked. Compromised how? She slid over a second folder. This one was thinner. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a still from a security feed. I stared. It was Greg, mid-handshake, someone I hadn't seen in 4 years. Jordan Blake, the ex-CTO of Cinzera, our fiercest rival. A man so toxic, our legal team had an entire clause named after him, the Blake Protocol. No one from our company could so much as share a rideshare with him without triggering disclosure obligations. The timestamp on the footage, last week. Hotel lobby. 11:16 p.m. Melinda watched my reaction carefully. Greg's been feeding them structural details. Probably code snippets, possibly worse. If I can tie that meeting to the recent data leaks, I can confirm it, I interrupted, standing up too fast. I still have shadow telemetry inside the dev pipeline. Not active, just watching. I'll find the match. You'll need to be subtle, she warned. If Jonathan gets wind, he won't, I said, already pulling up my secure shell access on a dummy device. He's too busy drafting his Medium post about resilience in adversity. I paused. Besides, I added, he still thinks I'm his best shot at redemption. Melinda smirked. Let him. We left separately. She through the front, like a queen leaving court. Me through the kitchen, like the ghost of the codebase returning to its origin. Back in my apartment, I powered up the isolated drive. It purred to life like a machine that remembered being loved. Lines of system logs greeted me like an old friend. But one line stood out. Unusual code commit pattern detected. Source, Greg at Contractor Ops. File, v2 metrics.js match similarity, 91% with SynZera proprietary schema. I stared. He hadn't just stolen from us. He'd handed them everything. And now I had proof. But it wasn't enough to expose him. It had to destroy him. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was anxious, because I was calibrating, plotting. I had one chance to light the fuse without getting caught in the blast, and I wanted the explosion to be symphonic. By 4 a.m., I had cloned Greg's entire contractor workspace, every shady commit, every Slack DM he sent from his burner laptop. He wasn't just bleeding intel to SynZera, he was running a /B tests on their scripts inside our sandbox. It wasn't sabotage, it was integration. Quiet, symbiotic betrayal. He thought no one would notice because the tests were masked as load balancers for a theoretical B2B demo. Except, I'd written the original B2B load balancer. I knew its architecture like I knew my own reflection, and what Greg had spliced into it didn't belong. The final nail came when I decrypted a zipped folder he'd sloppily left on an S3 bucket, titled Draft Analytics Metrics V4 like a bored intern labeling homework. Inside, a full SynZera pitch deck, with our UI, our codebase, and God help him, my name still buried in the metadata of the screenshots. It wasn't corporate espionage, it was plagiarism, and it was documented. I sent it to Melinda in an encrypted package labeled, "Here's your guillotine." Her reply came 30 seconds later. Just one word, proceed. Got to the office before anyone else. Used my old badge, still active, because Jonathan was too disorganized to disable anything that didn't scream or explode. I walked past the fake moss wall in the lobby, past the cold brew on tap, past the interns taking selfies on beanbags, and into the war room, a glass box meant for client demos and strategy huddles. I patched into the main projection system, loaded one file, final truth PPTX, then I sat in the far corner, hood up, face calm, like a bomb waiting to feel its wires cut. 10 minutes later, the board walked in. Melinda followed. Greg strutted in last, sipping a matcha like a startup Jesus, ready to sermonize another quarter of agile pivots and frictionless synergy. Jonathan stumbled in behind him, already sweating. No one noticed me in the corner. That was the plan. Until slide 1 appeared. Exhibit A, how to steal a company in 6 easy steps. They all froze. Slide 2, the SynZera pitch deck with my name in the metadata circled in red. Slide 3, Slack logs from Greg's burner. Slide 4, his login timestamps from SynZera's sandbox cross-referenced with our deployment pipeline. Slide 5, a single sentence typed in blood-red text across a black screen. He didn't build it, he sold it. Silence. Glorious, acidic silence. Melinda stepped forward. Greg, she said calmly, would you like to explain how your personal laptop accessed SynZera's dev environment through a VPN masked under a Croatian IP last Tuesday? Greg stammered. That's not, you're taking this out of context, like hell she is, Jonathan croaked, pale as drywall. Is this why we lost Obsidian Capital? They cited data integrity concerns. You told me it was a billing issue. Greg looked around, suddenly realizing no one was sitting next to him anymore. Even his fellow Jimbro product manager had inched away. Then I stood. The whole room turned. Greg's face dropped like a corrupted database. Hi, Greg, I said, smiling. Remember when you called my backend cute? He didn't answer. Melinda did. This is Maya, formerly invisible. Now, your replacement. And just like that, the projector shut off. And Greg's career did too. The fallout wasn't quiet. Thundered through every Slack thread, every subchannel, every whispered coffee chat. Greg didn't just get fired, he got scrubbed. Like a virus. His badges revoked mid-meeting. His GitHub handle deleted from our contributors list like it had never existed. One dev said they saw him crying in the stairwell, trying to export his contacts before the security team boxed his MacBook. I didn't feel bad. He had tried to sell my life's work like it was a knockoff Rolex at a yard sale. And now, I had the floor. Jonathan was next. Melinda didn't even blink when she dropped the axe. Restructuring, she said, like it was a euphemism for exorcism. He tried to spin it as a transition into a visionary advisory role. But by the end of the week, every investor email was bouncing back, and the only advisory he was doing was on Reddit boards about life after burnout. Reached out to me once more. The message was short, just, I made a mistake. They were right about you. I didn't reply. Instead, I walked into the all-hands the following Monday, this time from his seat. No preamble, no fake smiles, just me, a black turtleneck. A screen behind me that read, "The platform is listening." I began, "You all heard the story. But here's what you don't know, this system, our system, wasn't just built to run." Click. Slide changed. Codebase, vectors, neural drift graphs. It was built to learn, to detect what doesn't belong, what feels off, what violates the laws we claim to follow. Click. Greg's name lit up in a node graph like a virus under a microscope. The platform didn't just survive sabotage, it flagged it, quietly, repeatedly. But no one listened, not until it screamed through failure. Silence. Then murmurs. I looked at them, engineers, analysts, product leads, some ashamed, some awed, all awake for the first time in months. I was told no one would notice when I left, I said, voice even. But the platform noticed, the data noticed, and so did our investors. Click, final slide. Just 3 words were not replaceable. Applause, hesitant at first, then stronger. People stood, not for performance, for a return. Melinda met me afterward near the elevator. That was surgical, I shrugged. I wasn't trying to be dramatic. She smirked. You weren't. We're inevitable. I smiled, tired. Is it over? Her eyes scanned the office like a general inspecting fresh territory. No, she said, it's just beginning, and she was right. Because while Greg was busy cleaning out his locker, I was already logged into the system, reading a new string of flagged anomalies. Not security threats, behavioral ones that hadn't come from Greg or Jonathan, but someone else. Someone still inside. The anomaly came from Rosa, head of partnerships. The same Rosa who once called me quietly brilliant in a team feedback loop, and then pitched my predictive churn model to investors like she'd coded it in her sleep. I always suspected she had claws hidden beneath those manicures, but I underestimated just how deep she'd been digging. The logs told the story. A pattern of unauthorized queries spiking every Friday at 3:12 a.m., right after our weekly data refresh, cloaked under what looked like an automated compliance audit. Only the access token she used hadn't existed until after my permissions were revoked. Worse, the IP traced to a location 1 floor above Cinzera's New York office. Coincidence? Try again. She wasn't just watching. She was funneling behavioral metrics, client performance curves, internal notes tagged experimental. All of it dripping, slow, silent, to the hands of a competitor who had already been scorched by our code once. And now, she was arming them with a second shot. I didn't alert Melinda, not yet. This time, I wanted the confrontation to be personal. That night, I requested a meeting with Rosa under the guise of transitioning analytics leadership. She accepted, gracious as always. Smiling. Probably thought I was going to hand her more credit, more code, or pieces of me to polish into her next promotion. We met on the rooftop. Neutral ground, sunset, that perfect hour where everything glows and everyone lies prettier. I'm impressed, she said, crossing her arms. You turned this around fast. I tilted my head, funny. You always said I moved too slow, that I needed to think more like a founder. She smiled, teeth bright. Well, you proved me wrong. I nodded, then slid a flash drive across the table between us. What's this? She asked, too casually. A copy, I said, of everything the system traced to your fake audit token, plus the VPN logs, plus a snippet of your Zoom call last Thursday with a Cinzera advisor who still hasn't figured out how to mute his mic. Her face didn't fall, it calcified. Cold, beautiful, dead. I assume this is blackmail. No, I said, it's a courtesy. Pause. You can resign quietly, I added. Say you're pursuing your passion project. No questions asked. Or I leaned in, closer, or the system publishes everything you touched, all of it automatically. It's already scheduled. Her jaw clenched. You wouldn't, I smiled. The platform is loyal, not stupid. It knows betrayal when it sees it, and now so do I. She stared at me for a long second, then pushed the flash drive back. Stood. I hope you know what kind of war you've started. I stood too. I didn't start it. I just stopped pretending it wasn't happening. She left, just like that. No fireworks, no tantrum. By morning, her resignation email hit every inbox in the company. 3 words in the subject line, time to rebuild. She never said goodbye, didn't need to. The platform noticed. The investors noticed. And this time, everyone noticed. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.